Юрка, ты нас не подведи там, а мы тебя здесь.
On April 12, 1961, at exactly 9:07 a.m. Moscow time, a 27-year-old Soviet pilot named Yuri Gagarin became the first human being to leave Earth. For 108 minutes, he orbited our planet at 17,500 miles per hour, seeing what no human had ever seen before: the curve of the Earth, the blackness of space, the thin blue line of our atmosphere. When he landed in a field in western Russia, Yuri Gagarin had changed everything. The space age had begun. But just 7 years later, this hero of the Soviet Union was dead, killed in a mysterious plane crash that some say was no accident. This is the story of the farm boy who touched the stars and paid the ultimate price for his fame. What would you sacrifice to be the first person to see Earth from space if you knew it might cost you everything? Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin was born on March 9, 1934, in the village of Klushino, about 100 miles west of Moscow. His father, Alexei, was a carpenter and bricklayer. His mother, Anna, worked on a collective farm. They were peasants, simple people living simple lives in a country that was transforming itself through blood and steel. Yuri was the third of 4 children. As a boy, he was curious, energetic, and fearless. He loved to climb trees, explore the forests around his village, and dream about flying. But Yuri's childhood was shattered when he was 7 years old. On June 22, 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Within months, German forces had swept across Western Russia, leaving death and destruction in their wake. In October 1941, German troops occupied Klushino. For nearly 2 years, Yuri and his family lived under brutal Nazi occupation. The Germans turned the Gagarin family out of their home and forced them to live in a tiny mud hut. Yuri's older brother and sister were taken as slave laborers and sent to Germany. His father was beaten for refusing to collaborate. Yuri watched his world burn, but he also learned something that would define the rest of his life: that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they had to. When the Red Army finally liberated Klushino in 1943, Yuri was 9 years old. He had seen the worst of humanity, but he had also seen the best. Soviet pilots had risked their lives to drop supplies to the resistance. They were heroes to young Yuri. He decided he wanted to fly. After the war, the Gagarin family moved to the town of Gzhatsk, where Yuri attended school. He was a good student, but not exceptional. His teachers remembered him as hardworking, disciplined, and popular with his classmates. But Yuri had a secret dream. Every night, he would lie in bed and imagine himself soaring through the clouds, free from the earth that had seen so much suffering. In 1950, at age 16, Yuri moved to Moscow to attend trade school. He studied to become a metalworker, but his real passion was the flying club at the local airfield. On weekends, Yuri would take the train to the airfield and watch the pilots practice. He volunteered to help with maintenance, cleaned aircraft, and did whatever he could to be around airplanes. Finally, in 1954, he was allowed to take his first flight. The moment the small training aircraft left the ground, Yuri knew he had found his calling. The earth fell away beneath him, and for the first time since childhood, he felt truly free. He was a natural pilot. His instructors were amazed by his skill, his composure, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. Within months, Yuri was flying solo. In 1955, Yuri was accepted into the Orenburg Air Force Academy. It was a dream come true for the farm boy from Klushino. He would finally become a real pilot. At Orenburg, Yuri excelled. He was disciplined, focused, and determined to be the best. He studied aerodynamics, navigation, and aircraft systems with the intensity of a man who knew this was his only chance to escape his humble origins. But Yuri was also popular with his fellow cadets. He had a warm smile, a quick wit, and an infectious optimism that made people want to be around him. He was the kind of person who could make friends anywhere. In 1957, Yuri graduated from the academy and was assigned to an airbase near the Arctic Circle. It was a harsh posting, but Yuri didn't complain. He flew MiG-15 fighters in some of the most challenging conditions on Earth. It was here that Yuri met Valentina Goryacheva, a medical student who would become his wife. She was beautiful, intelligent, and strong enough to handle the demands of being married to a military pilot. They married in 1957, and Yuri seemed to have everything he wanted: a career as a pilot, a loving wife, and a bright future. But the universe had bigger plans for Yuri Gagarin. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial satellite. The space age had begun, and suddenly, being a pilot wasn't enough. The Soviets were secretly developing a program to put a human being in space. They needed pilots who were small, physically fit, mentally tough, and absolutely fearless. Yuri Gagarin fit the profile perfectly. In 1959, Yuri was selected as one of 20 candidates for the Soviet space program. The selection process was brutal. Candidates were subjected to extreme physical and psychological tests designed to weed out anyone who might crack under pressure. They were spun in centrifuges until they passed out. They were locked in isolation chambers for days. They were subjected to temperature extremes, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. Many candidates dropped out. Others were eliminated for minor physical defects or psychological weaknesses. But Yuri thrived. He remained calm, focused, and optimistic no matter what they threw at him. His fellow candidates nicknamed him the man who never gets upset. By 1960, the field had been narrowed to 6 finalists. They were all exceptional pilots, all physically perfect, all mentally tough. But Yuri had something the others didn't: charisma. The Soviet leadership knew that whoever became the first man in space would become the most famous person on Earth. They needed someone who could represent the Soviet Union with dignity and charm. Yuri Gagarin was their man. The final selection came down to Yuri and another pilot named German Titov. Both men were equally qualified, equally brave, equally capable. But Yuri had one advantage: he was shorter. At 5 feet 2 inches, he fit better in the cramped Vostok spacecraft that would carry him into orbit. Sometimes, history turns on the smallest details. On April 12, 1961, Yuri was awakened at 5:30 a.m. at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. He ate breakfast, put on his orange spacesuit, and was driven to the launch pad. The Vostok 1 spacecraft sat atop a massive R-7 rocket, 125 feet tall and weighing 287 tons. It was the most powerful rocket ever built, and it was about to hurl Yuri Gagarin into the unknown. As technicians strapped him into his seat, Yuri remained remarkably calm. His heart rate never exceeded 64 beats per minute. When asked how he felt, he replied, "I feel excellent. I'm ready." At 9:07 a.m., the engines ignited. The rocket lifted off with a thunderous roar, accelerating Yuri from 0 to 17,500 miles per hour in just 9 minutes. As the spacecraft broke through the atmosphere, Yuri became the first human being to see Earth from space. "I see Earth," he radioed back to mission control. "It is so beautiful." For 108 minutes, Yuri orbited the planet, marveling at the sight of continents and oceans passing beneath him. He saw the thin blue line of the atmosphere that protects all life on Earth. He saw the blackness of space, dotted with stars that never twinkle beyond the atmosphere. He was alone in a way no human had ever been alone before. But he wasn't afraid. He was exhilarated. The feeling of weightlessness was somewhat unfamiliar compared with Earth conditions, he later wrote. Here, you feel as if you are hanging in a horizontal position in straps. You feel as if you are suspended. At 10:55 a.m., the Vostok 1 spacecraft began its descent back to Earth. The re-entry was violent and dangerous. The spacecraft spun wildly as it plunged through the atmosphere, heating up to thousands of degrees. But Yuri remained calm. At 23,000 feet, he ejected from the spacecraft and parachuted safely to Earth, landing in a field near the village of Smilovka. The first person to greet him was a farmer's wife named Anna Takhtarova, who was working in her potato field. "Have you come from outer space?" she asked. "As a matter of fact, I have," Yuri replied with his famous smile. Within hours, the news had spread around the world. The Soviet Union had won the space race. Yuri Gagarin was the most famous man on Earth. But fame, Yuri would discover, was a prison of its own. The Soviet government immediately recognized the propaganda value of Yuri's achievement. He was promoted to major, awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, and sent on a worldwide tour to promote Soviet achievements. For 2 years, Yuri traveled the globe, meeting world leaders, giving speeches, and attending state dinners. He met Queen Elizabeth II, President Kennedy, and countless other dignitaries. Everywhere he went, crowds gathered to see the man who had touched the stars. Children wanted his autograph. Women threw flowers at his feet. Men wanted to shake his hand. But Yuri was a pilot, not a politician. He wanted to fly, not give speeches. He wanted to return to space, not attend cocktail parties. The Soviet government had other plans. Yuri was too valuable as a symbol to risk on another space mission. He was grounded, assigned to desk jobs and ceremonial duties. It was torture for a man who lived to fly. Yuri began to drink. He had affairs. His marriage suffered. He gained weight and lost his edge as a pilot. By the mid-1960s, Yuri was fighting to return to active duty. He completed additional training, passed all his tests, and begged his superiors to let him fly again. Finally, in 1968, they relented. Yuri was cleared to return to flight status. He was assigned to a routine training mission in a MiG-15 fighter jet. On March 27, 1968, Yuri and his flight instructor, Vladimir Seryogin, took off from Chikalovsky Air Base near Moscow. It was supposed to be a simple training flight, lasting less than an hour. At 10:31 a.m., radio contact was lost. Search teams found the wreckage of their aircraft in a forest about 40 miles from the base. Both men were killed instantly. Yuri Gagarin was 34 years old. The official investigation concluded that the crash was caused by pilot error or a bird strike. But many people suspected something more sinister. Some believed that Yuri had been murdered by Soviet officials who feared he was becoming too independent, too critical of the government that had made him famous. Others thought he had been killed by rivals within the space program who were jealous of his fame. Still others believed it was simply a tragic accident, the kind that kills pilots every day around the world. The truth may never be known, but what is certain is that the world lost a hero on that March day in 1968. Yuri Gagarin's legacy extends far beyond his 108 minutes in space. He proved that human beings could survive in the vacuum of space, opening the door for all the space exploration that followed. He inspired a generation of young people to pursue careers in science and engineering. He showed the world that the impossible was possible, that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. But perhaps most importantly, Yuri gave humanity a new perspective on our place in the universe. When he looked down at Earth from space, Yuri saw no borders, no nations, no divisions between people. he saw one small, beautiful, fragile planet floating in the cosmic darkness. "I could have gone on flying through space forever," he said after his flight. In a way, he did. Every time a human being travels to space, they follow the path that Yuri Gagarin blazed. Every astronaut, every cosmonaut, every space tourist owes a debt to the farm boy from Clushino who dared to touch the stars. Today, April 12th is celebrated as International Day of Human Spaceflight, commemorating Yuri's historic achievement. His hometown of Clushino has been renamed Gagarin in his honor. Statues of him stand in cities around the world. Craters on the Moon and Mars bear his name. But the best memorial to Yuri Gagarin is not made of stone or metal. It's made of dreams. Every child who looks up at the night sky and wonders what's out there is carrying on Yuri's legacy. Every scientist working to unlock the secrets of the universe is following in his footsteps. Every person who refuses to accept that something is impossible is channeling his spirit. Yuri Gagarin showed us that the sky is not the limit, that human beings are capable of incredible things when they dare to dream big and work hard to make those dreams come true. He was a farm boy who touched the stars. But more than that, he was a reminder that all of us have the potential for greatness, no matter where we come from or how humble our beginnings. The universe is vast and mysterious, full of wonders we can barely imagine. But thanks to Yuri Gagarin, we know that it's not beyond our reach. We are all children of the stars. Yuri was just the first to go home. His flight lasted only 108 minutes, but it changed everything. The boy who dreamed of flying became the man who taught humanity to soar. And in doing so, he made us all a little bit more than we were before. Yuri Gagarin touched the stars, but more importantly, he helped the stars touch us.